Living a life with no regrets is such a foreign concept to me. And I wonder if some of this just naturally ties in with being an artist. I would venture to guess that if you are an artist, that regret might just be an integral component of existing as one. It certainly seems to be the case for me. After all, how can you possibly get into your adult life without having some regrets about the time that you didn't invest in your art? For the time that you dedicated to specific things that no longer have any power over you? For aiming your career towards something that made your parents happy or would be approved of by the greater culture at large? Perhaps you got a degree or pursued a career in a field that didn't actually do anything for you. Something that let your creativity sit in the background and rot into nothing. No, regret seems to be almost an integral component of being a creative person. But what I'm curious about today is whether it's just an intrinsic thing we have to deal with, baggage that comes along with being an artist, something akin to all of the crates and chains that are attached to Jacob Marley in A Christmas Carol, the atrocities and the regrets that he has linked to him even in the afterlife as he tries to pass on to Scrooge that he does not have to follow through on that same path. Or do these regrets serve some purpose? Is there some beneficial component that they take care of for us? Is there a purpose behind them? Or are they simply a tragedy that we have to hold on to? The terrible thing that comes along with the beauty of being an artist. I know several people that seem to actually be able to live their life without regrets, or at least once they've done something that is regrettable, they're able to forgive themselves and move on. This I understand, and I think that it's a productive way to approach life. But these people seem to be rare. I'm able to move on from things, to find peace and solace in opportunities missed, but I always seem to hold on to some small quantity of remembrance. If it's not actually emotion, then it's just the logical knowledge that I flubbed that was a situation that could have been something else, could have been beneficial to me, and I missed out on it. But far more frequently, I endure this level of regret for time I didn't spend in my art. For a decent amount of time while I was professionally teaching art, I made very little for myself. I drew and painted frequently, of course, but it was always in demonstration to my students. Only a couple times a year, generally at the beginning of the year when I was really excited about things, would I work on art for myself. And then inevitably, I would become tired. I would become burnt out or worn out with the rigors of daily life, and the art would kind of fall into obscurity. Then being only picked back up during the summer break when I was able to recharge some. So I regret those 11 years of time that I did not spend putting any amount of effort into my art, any real effort. I have pieces from that time that are wonderful, but when I look at the rate at which I'm capable of working, it's disappointing to look back on that time. So what does that do for me? Is that just something that I have to hold on to and move forward with? I think that is a common approach. I don't want to let these things from my past that could be productive simply sit there and weigh myself down. The older I get, the more I try to look at each piece of my life, especially the negative components, and try to figure out how they can serve me in some way. You know, if you have a fight with a friend and you guys make up and you move forward, but nothing comes from that, there's no benefit to you, then it was just a waste of time. It was a negative experience that didn't serve any greater purpose. So what can we do with our regrets about how we've spent time? The big thing for me is I've tried to look at that and use that as fuel moving forward. I don't want to feel that feeling again, and so that can lead me on a daily basis, or more accurately, a several times a week basis, to actually continue working forward. This idea is the reason why I've been able to work on writing my novels for the first time, even though I've wanted to for the last 25 years. But here's the thing about regret when you finally engage with the thing that you've been putting off. When you dive back into your art, whatever form this takes, and you feel the first pieces of success, you see progress occurring, it's not all that uncommon to be hit with this, oh my goodness, what could have been accomplished if I would have worked the entire time? When I started writing my novel and I got, my first 10,000 words or first 30,000 words done, or even finished the first novel, it was really easy to sit there in that moment, find joy, and then watch it dissipate, watch it fall through my hands as I contemplated, oh my goodness, this only took me like 9 months to do. I could have done this at any point in time. And it's easy to let that progress and success actually become tainted and become disappointing when it should be exciting. Now, right off the bat, this is kind of a farce. It's not true. The you of today is not the you of years ago. If I had tried to write these novels when I was a much younger man, they would not have been as good. I don't know that they're good now, but they wouldn't be as good as they are now if a younger me wrote them. My life has not been super easy the last decade. There's been a lot of weird medical stuff. There's been things regarding disabilities. There's been a lot of trauma and death in our family. Those things are part of life, and they enrich the narrative of anything you do. I think some of the dark aspects that my art takes on these days are tied into what my life has been. And so it was a different version of me who could have attempted those things earlier. So it's kind of a farce to sit there and look at it and go, well, if I had just started drawing or started painting seriously a decade ago, what could I have accomplished? Yes, that might be true on some level, but it's not like the progress that you achieve now is exactly the same as the progress you would have achieved years ago. You're a different you. You're most likely a more refined version of you, a more knowledgeable version of you, a less naive version of you. And your artwork, your writing, your creativity is going to bear that out. The other side here is that it's terribly unproductive to focus on those kinds of things. What is achieved by sitting there and holding on to your regrets and giving them power over you while you contemplate what could have happened? Nothing. All that you do is you create a negative feedback loop in your mind, and you create a situation where you're thinking and pondering and musing rather than actually working. The reality is you didn't work all those years. You didn't dive into this thing earlier. You didn't write your novel a decade ago. And that is an indisputable fact of reality. And yet, nothing can be done about it. So focusing on it does only damage. It only hurts your progress. I heard a phrase a long time ago, and I really like it. It's one of those things that didn't make a lot of sense to me when I was young, but makes a ton of sense now as I approach 40. And it's that the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. There's a lot of wisdom in this saying, because obviously it would have been best if you started your artistic pursuits a decade ago or 2 decades ago, but you don't have control of that anymore. What you do have control of is focusing on the moment and not putting it off for another 10 years. If you have a desire to do something creatively and you are beating yourself up for not having done it in the past, that is understandable, but it achieves nothing. In fact, actually, it does achieve something. It halts you. It keeps you from moving forward. It allows you to stagnate even more. So, yes, it would have been good to have started a long time ago, but focusing on that only keeps you from starting today. Another angle to think about this from is when you look back on yourself 5 or 10 years from now, what decision is going to cause you to be happy with the current day version of yourself? I can certainly say for myself, whether these novels go anywhere, when I look back in 10 years and I have several books finished, I wrote the trilogy that I started playing with when I was 12, that I've been tinkering with for 25 years, I will be happy that I took the time and did that. In the moment, it's tough. It's tough to sit down every single day and spend an hour writing. It's tough to spend 5 or 6 hours a week studying and drawing and painting and trying to keep things and replace work that sells in the gallery. That's work. But the thing is, generally for me, it's the starting of each of those things that is stressful. It's the clearing out the time to sit down and actually write. It's cleaning the studio space and making sure that I can sit down and draw or paint that is stressful. But once I'm involved, it's kind of just, premature flow state. I don't get into flow state a ton, but I get into like a precursor to it pretty frequently where it's like, oh, well, I'm already here. It's easier to keep moving than it is to, change direction. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. And so if you are sitting down and doing nothing but fretting about your regrets, it's easy to stay doing that. Likewise, when you dive into the things that are productive, the things that you want to do, it's easier to keep doing that as well. So I try to think about the future me. What would I be happy with looking back, 5 or 10 years later and going, oh man, I'm really happy I did that. I'm happy that I've spent the last 2 years making videos, the last 2 years making all of these drawings and paintings, that I went out on a limb and applied to a local gallery and got in. I haven't made a ton of money in any of those aspects, but I've grown a ton as an artist. I'm learning from older people who've been in the industry a lot longer than me. And I'm planning here in the next 2 years after we get moved and my wife and I can kind of settle things down in the broader strokes of our life to actually start participating in local art shows and maybe even doing some travel, because my wife works fully remote right now, so the two of us could do that together. These are things that it's really easy for me to look back on and regret that I haven't done. But because I have no control over that anymore, I'm focusing on what I can do to ease regrets in the future. Put myself in a place where maybe it is stressful and anxiety inducing, but it's exciting and it has the opportunity for growth. Yes, failures are going to come. They really are inevitable. And at least for my way of thinking, because they're inevitable, they just shouldn't be worried about. I don't worry about the fact that I have to sleep every day or eat every day, because those are things that just have to happen. So I try not to stress about failures. I anticipate them and I'm pleasantly surprised when they don't occur. But in the future, you are going to beat yourself up more. You are going to regret more not trying a thing. You are likely not going to look back on yourself and go, oh, I'm so happy I avoided those risks. I'm so happy I didn't have any failures because I chose to play it safe. This could be one of those things where we look back with rose-tinted glasses or nostalgia takes over, but the reality is you are not going to congratulate yourself, most likely, for failures averted. You're going to congratulate yourself for taking risks. You're going to congratulate yourself for progress and success. And those things always come with a risk of failure. They always come with a risk of things not turning out the way you want. But they very seldom come alongside with regret later. Any of the things that I've tried to do artistically that have not succeeded, I don't regret. I don't regret building this channel. I don't regret teaching. I don't regret trying out for some of the art shows when I was younger that I didn't get into. I don't regret any of the graphic design work I did or that degree, even though I haven't done a ton with it since I got it. Those were all good pursuits in the moment. I'm happy with the fact that I have a graphic design degree, that I've tried to do so many things. This is just part of life. You can't succeed at everything. Unless, of course, you just engage in nothing except for things that you know you can succeed at. And that sounds like a really boring life. So I don't know if the regrets in and of themselves serve a purpose. I wish I could say that each of those boxes that we are carrying, just like Jacob Marley, can be cracked open and turned into something useful. And maybe that is what I'm saying, though. I'm thinking of them more as fuel. I can look at those boxes of regret and know that they are just a piece of my past. I can choose not to let them weigh me down in the moment, but I can really look at them and let them guide me towards future situations, towards situations that won't cause the further accumulation of regret. Because regret does weigh you down. And you can do a lot of work, either through therapy, counseling, meditation, or even just sitting down and forgiving yourself to let go of those regrets. I don't think that's a bad thing, but they are useful in some degree if they point you towards things that will avoid future regrets. So I wish I would have started writing my novels 20 years ago. I wish I would have really gotten serious about art a decade ago. I wish I would have tried to or crafted out time while I was teaching to really spend a lot of time working on my art. But Those things didn't happen. I don't have control of them anymore. All I have control of is what I'm doing now and how I move forward. But what about you? How are you moving forward? Do your regrets serve a purpose for you? I would love to hear about it in the comments below. Well, thank you for being here. We aren't doing quite as many of the sketchbook sessions these days, but every once in a while they fill in a gap in something I want to talk about on the channel, and they're just kind of a lot of fun. They're a place to show off the current little drawings that I'm working on, like this guy, which is actually part of our weekly prompts on the Discord server. If you don't have an artistic community, I would encourage you to check out the Discord server below. It's just a small little community where we work on weekly drawings and share what we're up to and, complain about the general normal artist things, but mostly it's just a little bit of community. Thank you to my patrons as well, who are on the screen right now, and you can check out my Patreon in the link below. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.